Sri Lanka. Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome. I'm here to open the Disrupt Asia conference this year, and I wanted to talk a little bit about a startup life. So if you don't know who I am based in Hong Kong, and I am a startup connector, startup community builder, startup investor, just all-round startup guy. And I have this conference in Hong Kong called Rise, which is part of a family of conferences by the Web Summit company in Europe. I also co-founded a company called StartupsGBA, which stands for the Greater Bay Area, which is the southern part of China, including Hong Kong, that's becoming a new ecosystem, a new market for startups. This is who I am, and I'm here to talk a little bit about what I've done and how it can help maybe propel Sri Lankan ecosystem as far as it has for me in Hong Kong. This is me at the AngelList office in San Francisco. They have a sign, they have posters that give out to everybody. It says, "Startups are here to save the world." Like, I'm sure everybody here who's in startups already understands this, but I've showed this picture to people maybe in the corporate world, and they always ask me, "Casey, what does that mean? Are they actually going to save us?" And I say, yes. Why? Because it is the future. Right? A lot of people still today don't understand how technology will affect the world, especially if they're in traditional companies or countries that may have not gone to the next level yet in technology transformation. That includes Hong Kong. I mean, you may look at pictures of Hong Kong and think, wow, it's such a big, high-tech city, but there's a lot of people still clinging on to the traditional ways of doing business. So the way startups look at new ways of doing old things, as well as helping us to heal the world, you know, whether it be through just helping the unbankable find a way to do their banking online, to how do we recycle, how do we help save the oceans, things like this. There's a lot of different ways, and I think people doing startups are going to be able to solve these problems and thus save the world. So here are 10 things that I found really do help build out this thesis. And the first one I want to start with is community, because that's really what it's all about. 10 years ago, me and 5 other guys met in a coffee shop every week in Hong Kong to talk about startups. No matter what, we would meet every week just to discuss, like, what are you working on? What do you need help on? Things like that. And today, 10 years later, in Hong Kong alone, it's grown to so many different siloed communities. One's in fintech, one's in e-commerce. Even the French, of course, have their own communities, right, in Hong Kong. So it's very, very specific, and it's siloed. So if you were to come into Hong Kong, you could find people who are working in what you're doing. And I see this in every city I go to around the world, right? Whether it be London, Vancouver, San Francisco, everywhere there is this community building, and I think it's very exciting. This picture was taken this year at the end of one of the nights at Rise, and we have people here from Hong Kong. We have people from Sri Lanka, Thailand, Germany, the US, everywhere. And I feel like that's a very important part of building an ecosystem in your city. And it can be 5 people. You know, we were 6 guys, 5 guys for a long time until more and more people joined. And I think to the scale that, you know, at Rise now, we have about 18,000 people coming to Hong Kong once a year from around the world to kind of exchange ideas and share, you know, ideas about the future. So community is very important. Mentorship is also another main key aspect that I found. When I started doing startups, I'm quite old. I've been doing startups since the dot-com era. And when I was doing dot-coms, there was an older group that would kind of give me advice and things like that. So I'll never forget that kind of paying it forward idea. This guy standing next to me, I met him again in San Francisco. He used to come to those meetups that I was talking to you about with the 5, 6 guys at a coffee shop. He came when he was in high school, and I guess he was 17 years old, and he came to learn about, like, we just share ideas about startups, like, this is what a startup is, this is how to find investors, things like that. Then he went to university in the US, to Stanford, and in his dorm room, he was thinking, I need a way to get food. And him and his, his dorm buddies created a company called DoorDash. DoorDash today is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, food delivery platforms in the United States, valued at $12 billion US. And this is like, he's not my son. He looks like my son in this photo, but he's not my son. But I feel like I kind of helped him, the community helped him to grow and give him this kind of idea. And then when he traveled to the US, he was able to fulfill that dream that he had and that kind of idea of delivering food to everybody, not just kids in university. So this is the kind of mentorship I feel like. And now he's asking me, Casey, I'm going to come back to Hong Kong to Rise next year, and I want you to help me to find the next generation of startups that I can invest in. So this is kind of the paying it forward and how the mentorship always works. And I think mentorship is very, very essential. If there are older people in the community that know things, it's always good to have a sounding board about what you're working on, especially if they're in the vertical that you're in. So if it's finance or education or whatever, I feel like you need to seek out these mentors and bring them into your ecosystem. And from my experience, they are very willing to do it. Older people want to see younger people succeed, and they want to learn and understand as well the technology that comes around it. So mentorship is also very important into this ecosystem building. Now, a lot has been said about raising money from investors. And we're always looking for money. How do I find investors? People come to Rise just to meet investors because we invite over 500 investors from around the world in different stages of investing to come there. But I always look at a picture like this. This is the original office of Airbnb, right? They went through Y Combinator, which I'm sure a lot of you know is an accelerator in the US, and they give them like $150,000, and they basically have to build a product. And so the word bootstrap, I feel, is very important to a lot of ecosystems who always think that I got to raise some money first so that I can make a big company because, people like WeWork and Uber are raising billions of dollars. But to be honest, when you look at a photo like this, the founding team at Airbnb really just is in a garage. Look at, they're sitting on each other, and this is how they really started. So the idea to build a product, get people to use it first, well then it's easy to attract money after that. But I find a lot of young startups I meet are always trying to raise $1 million to start as kind of a thing rather than actually building a product. So I feel like this is a very important part. If you can build something even in your own community that people want to buy, you're going to think about how to scale that part out. Another thing I'm also a very big proponent of in terms of startup world is remote work. Remote work means basically just don't stay in the city that you're in if you're not finding traction, people who are interested, investors, staff, anything like that. The world is so connected today that you can go to almost any city that you feel is your city and find a network that would help you succeed. This is a co-work space I visited in Los Angeles this year. They house the Techstars space program. So, I don't know if you know this, because I didn't know this, the space companies in the US pay Techstars to have a program to help find new startups working in space technology. Now in Hong Kong, or anywhere, if you're looking to join a space, get a space company to be a customer like a NASA, well, it's going to be very difficult, right? So having these kind of spaces around the world available to you, I feel is a very good opportunity for you to see what's happening and to be able to network in those communities. Because the world is so big now, and everybody today in 2019 is really looking for the next evolution. It could be your company, could be your friend's company. The idea is that you need to be there. Conferences is one of the ways to get into that global ecosystem. But even just remote working. I mean, I work at WeWorks around the world, and I've always been able to plug into an amazing network just by being there, and not always being in Hong Kong. And also, as you probably know, with the remote work, you can build anything anywhere, which is, to me, the real benefit today. Before, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, it's hard to build things anywhere because, not everybody's on the same page. This is a picture of Victoria, British Columbia. I'm from Vancouver. I'm sure a lot of people here have heard of Vancouver. Victoria is the capital, and it's a very quiet place. It's where the government is. And yet, I found lots and lots of startups here building SaaS platforms, companies. because they like the environment, they like the lifestyle, it's cheaper there, but they can build this anywhere, and the founder would just jump on an airplane and fly to the US to meet his customers or fly back to Vancouver to meet the customers. I feel like today, as long as you have a broadband connection, you can build a software product anywhere. So if there's anybody thinking, well, you know, Sri Lanka is not big enough for these kind of things, it's always big enough because there's somebody somewhere that's interested in what you're building, as long as you can find the proper customers and network. Another thing I like to look at is transformation. Now, this gentleman, his name is Yotani-san. He is the president and CEO of Shiseido. Shiseido, as some of you might know, is a Japanese cosmetic company. He came to Rise this year to tell everybody that they're no longer a cosmetic company. They are building the future of this 150-year-old company to become a wellness company. And he is there to tell our audience and to tell you that they're looking to you, to the new young people building companies to help them grow theirs, right? It could be all kinds of new wellness technologies out there that they're not thinking about, right? The people who work at Shiseido are thinking about sales of cosmetic product, but he's looking at finding startups to help them retain that legacy and build on that legacy into the future. So if you're working on any type of product like this, the digital transformation of these corporate businesses that you see today is vital, right? I'm sure you know credit cards, like the Visas, the MasterCards, the banks are all trying to retain customers. And today, the millennials, the young people in the world, are using new ways to do banking. They don't want to be like their parents. They don't want to do things the old way. They want to do things the new way. And the idea is that, to be honest, they are afraid of startups disrupting their entire livelihood, as it's already been happening now. So the idea is these companies, the smarter companies, want to be in conversation with you. So another thing about this is never be intimidated about talking to big companies, because if they're not looking at the future and you are, always remember that you're in the right, and they are either going to be playing catch-up to this whole thing, or their entire vertical industry is going to be eaten by your company. So this is something I think is very important. We have a lot of corporate companies like this, Porsche, Mercedes-Benz. These companies know when they see Tesla that they are in trouble, right? So they have to also be in the game as well. And they're not just looking to up an electric vehicle, they're also looking for the entire services. How can they make their customers get everything from maybe just the mobile phone? These are things that you need to also remember when you're building products, is that you're building for your market, but you also have to look at big companies and how they can help and play into what you're building. New markets. Okay, so everybody thinks about the US as a big market. I don't know about you. I think here, maybe India is a big market for you. Maybe the new emerging markets are big for you as well. This is a photo of Shenzhen. All right, Shenzhen is about 45 minutes bus ride, train ride, car ride from Hong Kong. 10 years ago, it's quite not a very high-tech town. I was just there earlier this week, and it is completely transformed, right? So when a country wants to move forward, everyone will get behind it, and it will build to that. This city, I'm sure everybody here has heard of WeChat, and how WeChat has transformed the Chinese landscape for digital lifestyle. But that's one country, right? I mean, it's a major country. But we're looking at other countries, new emerging markets that maybe right now don't have much, right? I still remember going to Vietnam 5-6 years ago, and we went to a conference like this. And I have a similar talk just like this. I go back a few years later, and they've built co-work spaces, they have conferences, they have a bunch of startups. The whole ecosystem's built around, not what I just said, but I mean in general. People are able to build into that. And now Vietnam is a hot, hot market. Even last year at Rise, the Vietnamese startup won the pitch competition and got an investment right there on stage. So it's very exciting to see this kind of stuff. But markets are, it's not just America anymore, as probably a lot of people know. With trade wars going on, there's always a chance to look at new opportunities and new places that you may not think are the places that you might want to work in. Another thing to bring up is, I always think about this, keep innovating. I mean, maybe you're just starting your project now, you're starting your startup, but you have to always think about the next iteration. I feel that is the very important part, right? If you don't, someone is going to innovate for you. Like the ideas in the .com time were like eBay and E-Trade, right? eBay, the auction platform has now been upended by vertical platforms. Like if you want to buy sneakers online, you don't really go to eBay, you go to like an app called StockX, where you can go there and find sneakers for special purposes. So people start to, eBay's like your dad's auction site, right? And E-Trade, everyone's doing new kinds of trading. I don't know if you've heard of this company in the US called Robinhood. We have something in Hong Kong called 8 Securities. They're all doing stock trading for millennials. Very easy to stock trade, get involved in this kind of lifestyle. This is a photo. This is actually a business. This is Airbnb. So Airbnb, as you know, you can rent out your apartment, you can rent out a room in your apartment. They also got into experiences, so that if you want to go for, like, say, a tour around Colombo, you can go there and find somebody who can take you to, like, a food tour or take you on a sightseeing Instagram tour. They just launched, I think last week, animals experiences. I thought it was a joke. That was kind of weird. But it's not an incremental innovation, but basically you can go to a farm and hang out with some goats, have tea party with the goat. This is actually their photo. Or you can hang out with actually even Brian Chesky, the co-founder of Airbnb, allow you to come to his office and hang out with him and his dog, right? So this is an incremental upscale of the Airbnb model, but they want to make sure that you understand that it's not just rental houses, right, or rent rooms. It's experiences in a foreign country, right? They're doing very well in China. They don't have to compete with the Chinese copies of who Airbnb is because they're not really catering to them. They're catering to an international market that's coming to China that wants to have a safe and typical, predictable experience that they're used to, say, in the US or in Europe. So I think that's very interesting. Even things like Apple, right? Everybody says, oh, the new iPhone, it's just the same as the old iPhone, right? But is it, right? They're innovating slow, small pieces inside the business. They're never stopping with what they're doing, right? New camera system, new software that helps the camera be better than a normal camera. These small increments are always very important, and that's something that you should always remember as well, even when thinking about iterations on new products. It doesn't have to be so big. It has to just be something that's moving your idea a little bit further ahead. And I really believe that we've only scratched the surface of technology and startups, right? Some of you may think, oh, all the good ideas are taken. There's Amazon sells everything. How can I possibly compete with that, right? I look at VR industry, which is going to be great. Later on today, there's going to be a panel here about VR and AR. So VR a couple years ago was all the hype, right? I went to Silicon Valley and all the investors told me, Casey, invest in VR. It's going to be massive, right? And so lots and lots of money went into VR. Less than a year later, all those companies ran out of money and people dumped it for the next hot thing, which was cryptocurrency, right? And then look at what happened to that. It's a cycle, right? It's an ever-changing cycle. The people who have enough money to keep going are still building on this platform of virtual reality, right? If you've looked at it, if anybody here actually is in VR, obviously you know that Facebook's Oculus platform has grown leaps and bounds now, right? The Quest platform is amazing compared to where it was 2 years ago when VR was hot, right? So where's it going to be in the next few years? I feel like that is a market that's huge. And then you look at Amazon, looking at how, they used to sell books, now they sell everything. I can't get into that market, but you can. There's lots and lots of people out there who are selling products that are specialized, like suitcases, right? There's a company called Away that sells suitcases customized in a new market called direct-to-consumer. So they're able to not sell to Amazon, they sell directly to consumer, a curated, cool, for the, I guess millennials, people who like this kind of fashionable kind of brand, and able to sell online at high margins. I feel like there's a whole marketplace there. I'm wearing these glasses right now from a company called Warby Parker, one of my favorite brands. They're an eyeglass company that only recently have actual physical stores, but they sell inexpensive eyeglasses online and compared to the expensive ones. So there's a lot of opportunities in there, and I really believe whatever you read today is really only the surface has been scratched across this whole thing. I'm going to leave you with this quote. Does anybody here watch hockey? I didn't think so. Okay, so this guy is Wayne Gretzky. He's one of the most famous hockey players of all time. Now, if you've ever seen a hockey game, they're on ice skates, right? And they're using this hockey stick to hit a puck around. I guess it means it could be any kind of sport where you have to throw or pass along an object. But he says, I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been. Now, Steve Jobs has used this quote in his own keynotes for iPhone and things like that, and the technology that's in there. But the idea of knowing, of looking where something might be before it gets there, I think is a very important part of being a startup. I've seen startups that look at whatever happened in the US and maybe imitate it in their own market, which is fine, because there could be a market there for that. But I still think that the ones that will succeed the most will look at what's going to be popular in 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And you need to find a way to build that out if you believe in that to be where the hockey puck is going to be. I think that the future is very investable. When I was in Silicon Valley recently, I saw a lot of people investing in things that I thought personally right now were crazy, but they're not looking at right now or even next year. They're looking at the next 5 years. Where's social media going to be? Where is VR going to be? Where is fintech going to be? What's going to be happening here in Sri Lanka in the next 5 years? You have to look at that yourself. Because what I've seen, this is my first trip to Sri Lanka, but what I see already with all the construction, where is this country going to be in the next 5 years? It's going to be very exciting. And when you're building your product, you're going to have to think, where is Sri Lanka going to be in the world in the next 5 years? I look at China, and southern China, the Greater Bay Area, in the next 5 years. It's going to be even bigger than it is now. They announced a program earlier this year, and the Greater Bay Area had 70 million people. Today, there's almost 90 million people in that area. It's just grown so amazingly big with so much new opportunity that it's something that's exciting, right? You don't necessarily want to go to Shanghai, Beijing, these kind of main cities now because it is quite saturated. But the southern part of China doesn't have that much overtake, and there is an opportunity there for you. It's just about finding the right things, the opportunity, and then finding the future in that area. Thank you very much. I have the RISE conference in Hong Kong. If you want to see more of an international scope of what we're building around the world, I welcome you to come and join me in April 2020. I also have the StartupsGBA, which is a resource for companies that want to enter into the Greater Bay Area. And you can follow me on Twitter. That's my favorite platform of choice. But thank you very much, and good luck to Sri Lanka for the rest of Disrupt Asia. Thank you.